Let's start with a definition of funnel analysis in testing. So funnel analysis in testing is a tool that can be used to map, manage, and analyze various ideas aimed at improving or completely changing a given area of the business. This tool will help you to find fast potential improvements, as well as to minimize the risk of causing problems to the whole organization by gradually testing the ideas. It's also worth mentioning that to use the full potential funnel analysis in testing, we should also divide more complicated concepts into a series of smaller tests and test them independently separately before we consider implementing the whole concept. One last thing worth mentioning before we move to example is the fact that you have to quite often impose certain limits on certain stages to make sure that the testing process goes smoothly. So let's have a look at an example. So let's have a look at the general concept of the funnel in testing. As always, the first step is to map the stages. The first usually is about generating ideas. Then obviously we have to test them, make sure that they're viable. And after that, we have the stage at which we have to choose which one we will implement and which we'll simply not implement because they don't deliver the promised results. And finally, we've got the implementation stage. As it was in the case with the sales funnels, we have some sort of an input. In this case, our input will be tests we carry out. And obviously, as the time goes by, we try to move them to the right. However, not all of them will obviously end up at the end because we may decide not to do some of the ideas, or we may choose not to implement some of the things. As we have mentioned, the big difference here is that we usually would like to put a certain limit on each and every stage. So for example, here the limit is to have no more than 15 business ideas that we are considering. When it comes to testing, we should not test more than 4. In the stage phase, we should not choose more than 4. And implementation, again, it has its own limit of 2. Let's have a look at some examples of funnel testing that you may come across. So here, the first stage is idea generation phase. Then we have a concept phase where we put the idea into more details. After that, we've got the testing phase and finally implementation phase. Let's have a look at another example. So we start with idea, then we have an evaluation phase where we try to estimate the potential of each and every idea and to maybe somehow rank them. We would also most likely in this stage try to estimate the cost and the resources needed to test and later on implement the idea. After that, we've got the validation, which is similar to a testing phase. Once we have validated the idea, we can deliver it. In other words, implement it. And the final stage in this funnel would be benefit monitoring. So after delivery, we want to make sure that the benefits that we have estimated and that we want to achieve actually are reached. In other words, we want to reconfirm the things that we have estimated in the evaluation and validation stage. We will be using in this course our framework, which is pretty simple and similar to what we have shown here. So the first stage will be idea generation. After that, we have a stage where we prepare selected test to make sure that it is later on tested without any problems and in the right weight. Obviously, an important part of the testing funnel is the testing stage, where we conduct the test and we gather data. Once we've got the data, we can analyze the result and decide whether we implement it or not. So let's have a look in a little bit more detail at the process of creating and using the sales funnel.